So if you come into a gun store and want 3 or more assault rifles and pay $2 grand in cash, that's suspicious. Yet, look at this internal Fast and Furious document. In the first column are the names of the gun buyers. In the second column, you'll basically see when Fast and Furious began investigating these guys. The third column is the number of guns they bought before they were targets, 400 guns. And the last column is the number of guns they were allowed to buy while under surveillance, more than 1,300 guns. Why is this important? Well, in a news conference in January, the then head of the ATF office in Phoenix, Bill Newell, claimed that his agents had taken down the nation's largest gun smuggling network, top to bottom, his words, when in fact critics say it got nothing more than those street-level buyers, those guys in the first column that they could have arrested before Fast and Furious even began.
We feel very strongly that we have completely dismantled, if not significantly dismantled, a major firearms trafficking organization that was funneling guns in the hundreds.
Now, basically, we are told that this story that ATF had repeatedly claimed that they don't let guns walk, that we don't let the guns out of our sight, is entirely untrue, that basically these agents said that is not how we do things, and yet they were overruled and said, let it happen, in hopes that they would get this big fish or take down the whole network, and that never really happened, and they never really surveilled those guns.
Boy, it is
Martha?
Such a disturbing story, and William, you have done fantastic legwork on all of this, and it's really all about to really explode over the course of tonight and tomorrow. So, William, thank you. And we did some digging and found out that the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms oversaw the sale of more than 1,700 guns to suspected smugglers over the course of 15 months as part of this program. Now, at least 195 guns that passed into Mexico were linked to some form of crime or law enforcement action once those guns made it across the border from the United States. Mexican and U.S. police recovered only about half of the weapons that went out there to the smugglers. One ATF official says, quote, "There is nothing we can do to round up those guns once they are gone." So the second hearing into Operation Fast and Furious is set to take place tomorrow. Family members of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, who was killed with one of those guns that was sent to a drug cartel, they are going to testify. You'll hear from Brian Terry's family as part of this. We saw this investigation get very tense a couple of weeks ago, back when House Committee Chairman Darrell Issa, who will speak with us later today, accused the Attorney General Eric Holder of ignoring Congress's attempts to figure out what happened here through subpoena. Take a listen.
How about the head of the criminal division,
sure.
Lanny Brewer? Did he authorize it?
I'm not sure whether Mr. Brewer authorized it. I mean, you have to understand the way in which the department operates. Although there are operations, this one has gotten a great deal of publicity.
Yeah, they're dead Americans as a result of this failed and reckless program. So I would say that it hasn't gotten enough attention, has it, Mr. Attorney General?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's an investigation that is underway.
I'm aware of that investigation. Let me follow up with a couple of questions.
And we'll have to look at that to see exactly what happened with regard to...
Well, Mr. Attorney General...
I mean, I take very seriously the allegations...
Mr. Attorney General, do you take seriously... Mr. Attorney General, do you take seriously a subpoena signed by the Clerk of the House?
Of course.
Well, that was quite an exchange, and we are likely to see more along those lines. Congressman Issa is going to be here on America Live in just a little while. We're going to ask him what we can expect and what information may be in that report that's coming out at 6 p.m. tonight. Very big information coming in on that. So for now, log on to foxnews.com. While you're watching the show here, you can read more about this program, learn what went into it, and about the investigation that Congress has frustratingly been trying to launch into all of this and where they are and where it stands now. Brian Terry's family, of course, watching this extremely closely. You probably all remember when we reported the news that he had been shot in the line of duty as a Border Patrol agent. Now we know with a gun that was sold to him, that was used against him from the U.S. We're waiting a new report on a botched sting operation that accidentally armed some of Mexico's most dangerous men. Attorney General Eric Holder says that neither he nor President Obama authorized this operation, which has now become known as Fast and Furious. It was supposed to trace the flow of guns and firepower to ruthless drug cartels by intentionally allowing known criminals to buy up these large amounts of weapons and then follow them to see where they went. The feds were supposed to trace those back to the bad guys, but the problem is that they lost track of those weapons. And now we know that that foul-up led to the loss of American lives in some cases. California Republican Darrell Issa, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, has made this one of his major efforts in recent months. Congressman, good to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back, Martha. And normally we deal in waste, fraud, and abuse, basically the money issues of government. But when a federal agent, Brian Terry, is killed with weapons that were part of this program, we've got to make sure that everything is dropped until this is resolved, until we know that this administration will never allow a program like Fast and Furious to go so wrong again.
You know, we said in that introduction that American lives have been, at the hands of these weapons that fell into people's hands. They otherwise would not have had this gun had it not been for this program. How do we know that for sure?
We know because 2 weapons were found at the scene, because ballistics matches have been done. We also know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, because we get regular reports from Mexico on weapons that have been used in crime. So we already know that there are some of these weapons in killings in Mexico, not with U.S. agents necessarily, but it doesn't matter. A life is a life, and it's a life that need not have been lost if not for these weapons. Over 2,500 are estimated to have gone, and at least 1,600 are believed to still be outstanding.
Yeah. You talked about Brian Terry, the U.S. border agent who lost his life in a shootout with a gun that was traced back to this program. And we played here yesterday a quite lengthy segment from your questioning of Attorney General Eric Holder about this. And he said, I do take this very seriously. I have been to the funerals. I don't know if did he go to Brian Terry's funeral? Is that the funeral that he was referring to in that statement?
It was, and I believe he's taking it seriously now, but his administration didn't take it seriously when they authorized every aspect of this. Remember, this was funded. There were various wiretaps and other legal things that were done that had to be done at justice at the highest level. This was not a rogue operation of ATF. This was, in fact, a joint task force organized under his leadership that was wrong fundamentally from the start. It wasn't just a program that made mistakes, it was a program that was a mistake.
You've been, there's been an investigation going on in this. Now, what was the original aim? Was it to catch these cartel leaders, to catch them in a crime, or to, figure out whether guns were coming from United States-bought entities and going across the border? What was the goal of Fast and Furious originally?
Well, the stated goal was, in fact, to allow these weapons to walk so that, in fact, they could get to bigger fish. But so far, the biggest fish they've gotten to are the ones they could have gotten to on the first weapons before they ever lost track of them. Literally, they could have followed the guns, never lost track, and rolled up the same that they're rolling up now. But more importantly, once you allow hundreds and hundreds of these weapons to walk, there's an audit trail of people objecting, and objecting vigorously, and even being punished within ATF when they voiced concerns for what could happen with all these weapons, some of which didn't even go south, some of which were known to have gone north before they lost track of them. These kinds of concerns are what we're looking into.
When we watched that questioning that you did of Attorney General Eric Holder, he said that he did not sign off on this program, that President Obama was not aware of this program. So who was? Whose fault do you believe this program was, and is that person being held accountable?
Well, Martha, whether it's the Nixon administration or the Clinton administration, every administration is very careful with their words in a situation like this. What they said was they did not authorize. The president did not authorize. The attorney general did not authorize. He's never said he wasn't aware. And in fact, we know there were people aware in the Criminal Enforcement Division, political appointees. The question now is, of all those people that were aware, why didn't any of them view this as a mistake to do at all? And if they thought it was a good idea, how did they defend not providing the resources to follow? Understand, there's about 7 people at any given time involved in this program as far as agents. Imagine 7 people trying to look at thousands of separate purchases, or at least hundreds of separate purchases, going every which way. Very clearly, they lost track of these weapons from day one, yet they continued to let weapons walk.
Just one last question. You know, you said the stated purpose of Fast and Furious was to get these, you know, people who are carrying out these drug cartel crimes on the other side. Is there an unstated purpose to this program with regard to the guns sold here in the United States?
Well, many people have, if you will, internet conspiracy theories, and they're not without some possibility. The evidence we've found so far seems to be a legitimate set of forms, very careful forms that went all the way to Washington describing why they were going to do this and what they thought they would achieve. So for now, I take this investigation based on these memos that went all the way to Washington for approval, and that is enough for me to know that there were people who were not thinking the way you or I would, the way that virtually every person in your audience would, which is, how can you let thousands of weapons go and not realize you're part of the problem, not part of the solution?
All right, very interesting. We're going to stay on top of this. Darrell Issa, Congressman, thank you
Thanks,
very
Martha.
much. Good to talk to you today. All right, big story, so we'll stay on that. And in the meantime,